But for anybody who's on this call today, thanks for joining us on a Sunday morning, a couple hours earlier than usual. Um, we do record this and a lot of people watch it. So if for any reason you want to remain private, have your name be private, your face not on, this is a good time to turn off your video, and you can even change your name by going to participants and going over finding yourself at the participants, you can change your name. But the whole point of this is community. And twice this week, people have told me how they've met new friends through Parkinson School, through the Tuesday afternoon meetings and things like that. So I think meeting each other is hopefully what most of you are here for. So welcome. And if you've never been here before, welcome to Parkinson's School. On the 14th of every month, we ask a person with Parkinson's to tell us their story with the hope that they've been through things that we can learn from. They have lessons to teach, wisdom to pass on, and recommendations for the next generation. So Michel has offered to be the speaker for the month, and I'll hand the stage over and let him introduce himself and tell his own story. Welcome, Michel.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you everyone for agreeing to have a slightly earlier start, which works for me being in a different time zone. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Michel, as you have heard it. As you may have heard me say, I'm originally from Belgium, not from France, but I have lived in the UK for the last 30 years. Not that you can tell by my accent, unfortunately. I have 3 children, and I live here in Oxford with my wife, Beatrice. So it's now been more than 6 years since my diagnosis, and I have experienced symptoms for 8 years. So I'm still early on in the journey, but I have a few years under my belt. My very first symptoms were rigidity in my hands and fingers, which is basically what still affects me a lot, which prevented me from typing at the time on my computer or writing as well as I used to. So that was the first signs that came up. I will skip to the receiving the Parkinson's diagnosis, which was not a pleasant experience. And having spoken to many people since then, I think it rarely is a great experience, but it can be a bad experience. In my case, it was presented as a quasi-death sentence, a very gloomy future against which there was absolutely nothing I could do. So there was a heavy emphasis on the degenerative nature of the condition, but nothing was said about what I could do to manage my symptoms and slow down the progression. So following a long career as a senior executive in the financial sector, 30 years of that, one of my early decisions was to stop working. That was the silver lining in a sense, because I was exposed to a highly stressful work environment and sometimes toxic. And frankly, I needed a change. So instead, I turned my full focus to the Parkinson space. And within a few months, I realized that I did not want to be entirely focused on myself, which is quite easily done. You wake up with a new symptom, you observe yourself so much that actually you only focus on yourself. And I wanted to help others. Of course, there is an aspect of the positiveness, the positivity of helping others, but it's also for myself quite helpful as well. It keeps me busy in a very positive way. So however, my approach was going to be a bit different from traditional Parkinson's advocacy. So rather than focusing on generating general public awareness for the condition, I wanted to help people with Parkinson's understand what they can do to manage their symptoms and slow down the progression of the condition. And to make this possible, I co-founded No Silver Bullet for PD. You may have heard about us, to give our community direct access to information from the best specialists in the world and helping people implement the lifestyle changes needed to achieve those goals. And expanding on that mission, my wife Beatrice, who created the PD Buddy app that you may have seen, PD Buddy, we launched together Parkinson's Insights like a month ago to provide daily research updates and expert webinars to the community. Ultimately, I'm a firm believer in building a proactive personal toolkit, all the tools you can help to maintain your condition, your health as long as you can, and combining targeted physical exercise, nutrition, and meditation or relaxation. So my goal today is to help us all shift the narrative away from being a passive patient and toward becoming an active health champion. So let me share my screen and go through the presentation itself. Laurie, I don't know if people normally ask the questions towards the end or...
Yeah. I mean, if
okay, good.
it's up to you. I think it opens it up to discussion, but if you don't mind interruption,
Okay.
Your preference.
I don't mind interruptions. Either work for me. 1 second, I'm going to try to find this. So in the presentation I will share with you, there are a few things that actually I do that I do not recommend necessarily to everyone, like virtual reality, exercise, and meditation. I think that unless you are familiar with virtual reality, it can be quite dangerous because it can impact your balance. But nevertheless, there are also many things that I do not do that might be highly beneficial for others, like dancing, singing, art. So this is more of an example. I'm hoping that some parts of my presentation will be beneficial to you, also recognizing the fact that not everyone has as much time as I might have, or has the strength and physical capacity to do what I do. So the first thing on my journey is that I have tried to have a balanced approach to meds. By balanced, I mean not to push it back as something that I want to postpone for as long as possible. And on the other hand, also not to consume it so much that I only do that. So I started taking levodopa early on, but I believe there is much more that I can do than just taking the meds, and that's what we're going to talk about. So one thing I wanted to mention is a new slide in this presentation I've been sort of like improving over the years, is that there are practical ways to enhance the medication's efficacy. And that is very important because you take your pills, your Cinemet or Madopar or similar, but actually sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes it works so slow that actually it is missing the point. So I'm taking medication, not always, but when I need a more urgent or more rapid efficacy, I take vitamin C powder dissolved in water. This was recommended by Bas Bloom, and it works really well. Instead of 45 minutes to have my meds working, a half an hour is sometimes enough. Following advice from Laurie, so thank you very much for that, Laurie, I have implemented a protein redistribution strategy by consuming most protein at dinner. So I used sometimes to have lunches with 4 big eggs on toast and avocado, thinking that was very healthy. It is very healthy, but the proteins, including the eggs, were impacting the efficacy of my medicine in the afternoon, and I was really struggling to exercise. As soon as I stopped taking as many proteins for lunch, I saw really a surge in energy that has been going on for months. So it is not like I would say a temporary thing. You can basically test it yourself very easily on one day or two. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't make a difference for you, you go back to eating your eggs or your proteins as before. But in my case, that has really made a big difference. And managing constipation issues is very important. If you look at the website, you will see at the bottom of my presentation, Parkinson's Insights is our website. If you go there and you look at constipation, you will see a short presentation by myself explaining the kind of like natural ways in which I have been able to improve that thanks to my wife with a special drink with pineapple, ginger, and lemon and pepper. But you also see a video by Bas Bloom on the same topic. And despite doing all of that, off time can still occur unpredictably. So it is not a science. It's not an art either, but you can't really rely on it every day. Sometimes for reasons you won't understand, your medicine will not work or will work much worse than normal. So the strategies must remain flexible. What works on 1 year doesn't work necessarily for the rest of your life. And we'll talk about that later. So I take care of my body on a daily basis and I exercise a lot. I think that what you will see here is my exercise, but even someone in a wheelchair can exercise in a more limited way. Someone older, someone with more limitations will not do necessarily what I do, but can do many other things as well. So I started first by watching a lady called Sydney Cummings on YouTube. And but in the end, I designed my own routine using weights and stretching exercises. And that has helped me with my posture. And to be honest with you, apart from Parkinson's, I'm probably more healthy now than I was 5 years ago. It's hard to believe that. I alternate 2-hour walks when the weather allows it, and intense 30 minutes indoor bike or cross-trainer session. So every day I do 50 minutes of exercises, plus either a long walk or short sessions of very intense training. I also picked up again boxing that I had been doing for years, and I have a day when I go boxing. So what I have tried to do more recently is to bring some diversity, not to do the same thing every day. We were talking before we started this session with Laurie of the fact that traveling is good because it stimulates your brain. In the same way, I think your brain is more stimulated if you learn new things. Now, I know it sounds crazy and I'm a bit scared of it myself, but I used to rollerblade a lot and I will start again rollerblading if I can. And I hope not to break something. But I think that challenging yourself is important. And I put a point there about the hands. The rigidity in my hands is really a big problem for me. And I try to help myself with exercises. It does help to some extent. And I have regained some of my writing capability that I had lost at some point. Exercising my brain. Now, there is no scientific basis that says that using brain training apps are making you more intelligent or pushing back dementia or anything. But as Bas Bloom was saying, if you don't use it, your brain, you lose it. So those are three apps that I'm using: Elevate, Peak, or Lumosity for 30 minutes each day. I do that in the morning as I'm sort of like not woken up with a cup of coffee, and I take it easy. Now, taking care of my sleep. Sleep is a big problem. When I started this journey, I was sleeping fine. Then I started having some issues. And initially, melatonin was working really well. But after a while, it was not as potent as it used to be. And after a few difficult months, I have now again re-emerged into a healthy sleep nights with a combination of CBD and in particular THC, medical cannabis, which is not authorized in every single state in the US. But for those of you who have the legal framework for this where you live, and if you struggle to sleep, I really recommend it. The other thing as well is THC is helpful, but I also take levodopa during the night, before going to bed and during the night. I think that without the levodopa or without the THC, I would have trouble. So the combination of both is very important. And as I said, it's working now. I have 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep a night. Maybe that in 2 years' time, I will have another wave of difficulties and find another solution. But here we are. My nutrition has been profoundly changed with the help of my wife because I'm not much of a cook. But I opted for the Mediterranean diet, which I'm sure most of you have heard about through Laurie's school, with no alcohol and low gluten and dairy. Now, to be frank, I'm revising my opinion about dairy a tiny bit because I think there is scientific proof that dairy can increase your probability of developing Parkinson's. But I don't think that it has such a big impact once you have it. Nevertheless, I've kept low gluten and dairy for the moment. I really reduced added sugar and fat. That's entirely across all my nutrition. And I have increased my intake of vegetables and fruits massively. My breakfast is, for instance, 100% fruits. And my lunch is low protein, but with hummus or with vegetable soups, etc. And at night, I'm basically eating more proteins. More recently, I've started also to introduce a target of 30 grams of fibers each day, which I think can be helpful. And I'm using a liquid probiotic called Simprove, but it's only available in the UK because it's quite heavy to transport. That has helped me in improving my digestion and avoiding constipation, although nowadays I need more than that. Now, technology is a bit difficult. I've mentioned red light therapy because I've been doing it for years now. It's hard to say hand on my heart, red light therapy will change your life. Although if you look at the adverts from those companies, you will see that actually many people seem to turn up on Instagram to say that. Having said that, I'm doing it every day. And I don't know what the benefits are. It's very difficult when you do so many things to pinpoint one thing and to say that is helping. I'm using the PD Care laser, which is basically a green laser supposed to be stimulating your gut, your microbiome, and your vagus nerve. Those things are quite expensive. I still keep on doing it. But as I said, I think we need to look at the results of the trials that are taking place at the moment. Some of them were not that clear, but Symbix, to their credit, are financing a lot of trials. And as you see them emerging, you may then want to decide what you do on this. I'm using a hand massager at night. I'm using it, as well on my feet, watching TV at night. It doesn't help you fundamentally with Parkinson's, but it's a symptomatic relief. At least if you have like tiny cramps in your feet, as I sometimes have, if your hands are heavy, it helps in the moment. It doesn't help after that, but at least it just provides you a tiny bit of relief. And as I said, I'm using virtual reality on MetaQuest. MetaQuest is actually, I'll show you later if you want. It's basically, it's a goggles that you put on your head, and then you have those two joysticks if you want. And then you can box, for instance, or you can play Saber, which is against lasting shapes that are coming at you with great music. So this is, I think, for me, important. Trip, actually, for meditation is an amazing app. I can only recommend it. Really amazing. But as I said, I'll not recommend this blindly across the whole spectrum of people suffering from Parkinson's. I think that if you have an experience of video games or experience of a virtual reality, and if you are firm on your feet, then go for it. But if you have balance issues, I would just say, please be very careful with this. Now, the mind and the spirit, that's really interesting. I don't want to go entirely off piste here, but as you have heard probably, it's important to accept your condition and not letting the anxiety of the future ruin today. And through meditation and prayer, for some of us, I learned not to fear PD. And in a sense, I found that really amazing because when I started this journey, I was well aware that my father had Parkinson's and I had seen him passing away skeletally and totally emaciated. And I had those images of myself in a similar situation or in a wheelchair. And actually, this was really disrupting my peace of mind. And through meditation, I was not targeting that at all. So my meditation was not focusing on my father or anything. But through meditation, this progressively disappeared. And nowadays, it's very rarely that actually I do feel anxiety. And I really can attach it to meditation for roughly half an hour to an hour every day. Um, Now, exploring unresolved conflicts, I don't want to say too much about that, but actually, many psychologists will tell you that actually unresolved conflicts from your childhood, for instance, or even deeper, can be impacting your health today. And I went through that journey myself, and I think it was beyond Parkinson's a useful thing to do anyway. Now, trying to give up the right to be angry, I'm not good at that. And as I said there, I try to stop drinking the poison of anger. So my anger goes mainly at technology and limitations. For instance, I struggle with my keyboard, I struggle with my mouse, and that puts me in an angry situation. It's not a helpful emotion. I'm well aware of it. Meditation helps, but I have more work to do on this. Accepting the right to be happy is the reverse of this. So I enjoy nature. This is really one of the things I love most. My loved ones, my children, my wife, and travel. And I have learned that putting myself first is not selfish, which is an important message, actually. And also, I'm still learning to be nice to myself because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I need to accept that my best is good enough. If I go for an hour and a half walk and the last half hour is terrible, well, I should not focus only on the last hour, half hour that was terrible, but maybe on the first hour that was great. But that requires some work. But those are important points. Meditating, I spoke about that. I'm using a technique called autogenics. If you read about this, it's being used for people who come back from wars, soldiers who have been in stressful situations. It's a relaxation technique that helps me reconnect my mind and my body. You do body scanning, for instance. And I have done this now for 4 years, I guess, if not more, maybe 5. And I find it like meditation. It's almost like a safe place where I can go and basically regain my energy. So it really has helped me a lot. And when I'm stressed, for instance, I do practice some breathing techniques that I have on the Parkinson's Insight that have been helping me too. It has even helped me, those breathing techniques, with my tremors. Now, praying is not everyone's cup of tea. I'm not preaching, but personally, I believe that everything is possible. When you live in a world with a billion galaxies, and in each galaxy, a billion stars and planets, you do realize that our vision does not encompass the width of the world in which we really live. And I think that there is a higher energy there that keeps me safe. That's what I believe, and it helps me a lot. Especially when I have a difficult couple of weeks, like I have had recently, I know that I will re-emerge on the other side as I entered it. Which is very important. Being thankful as well for my heart that is beating, for my body that is breathing, and for the love that I receive. Those are things that are part of my prayers and that are really important. And then lastly, I'm helping others. Like hopefully I'm helping you somehow today. Avoiding being self-centered, that would really be bad for me. I'm basically turning my energy to try to help others. And I organize information sessions for people with Parkinson's, and you can find everything on Parkinson's Insight. So one thing very important as well, which is not really physical related, it is more intellectually, that I stay informed and I want to be a solid generalist in my condition. None of us will ever know as much as Bas Bloom, obviously. But we can develop a very broad-based understanding of our condition, much broad-based than many neurologists that are narrowly focused on medical solutions. So I aim to be a solid journalist in my condition. I found that many Facebook pages were rather depressing. My husband has had hallucinations, and then 10 people reply, yes, me too, me too, me too. And then you end up wondering when they will start, if you haven't had them yet. So, but I find that Health Unlocked, the website of Cure Parkinson's, Health Unlocked, is very positive, and people are asking genuine questions and helping each other and sharing things at work or information. So I use the PD Buddy app. This is the app that my wife developed. So people sometimes say, when you have lemons, you make lemonade. Well, the lemons was the Parkinson's, and actually, you see through this presentation how I manage that. But my wife is wonderful because she basically developed an app that helps me and others maintain their routine. One of the issues for people with Parkinson's is that, well, sometimes people don't know what to do, but even if they know what to do, they don't necessarily do it. So we all know we should exercise, but it's good to have an app that helps you stay on course if you want. So there is a tiny bit of a gamification on the app where you get points when you do your routine and you can compare yourself to others. So it is a great app to have a look. It's totally free. Have a look. And as I said here, I'm immensely fortunate to have the love and support from my wife and my children, and she are the reason why I'm doing this. Now, I remember those words from Laurie a few years ago, that loneliness is the single biggest predictor of a bad outcome of Parkinson's. So I'm very lucky and fortunate to have loved ones around me. But I think that for people who don't, it's very important to make a conscious effort to not isolate yourself. The worst thing you can do is to be alone. And so I wanted to get that message in there. Now, this is a quick view of my daily routine. This is my weekdays. This is my work days, so to speak. As you see, I wake up around 7, mental exercises, breakfast, meditation, free time, physical exercise, lunch, red light therapy, short nap, physical exercise again, free time, meditation, dinner. So I know that not everyone has as much time as I was able to make by stopping to work. But hopefully for people who don't have that much time, they can do a reduced version of this. So this is a slide that basically shows you where you can go to see our webinars. So all our past webinars are on YouTube. The PD Buddy app is easy to find, and Parkinson's Insights has all of that. So if you can only remember one thing, remember Parkinson's Insights. I'll show you the next page. The next page shows you here the No Silver Bullet link, shows you here the PD Buddy link. And what you have on this is not this is only a page. I can't scroll down, but you have news that are curated by PD Buddy every day. This is here, summary of the news and the article behind. There is a webinars that we have organized over the last 5 years, and the ones that are coming up. We have daily contributions by Michael Okun. We have weekly contributions by Baz Bloom, and we have some hacks. This is basically little tricks I'm sharing that have worked for me. So for instance, how did I overcome constipation? The last one I published was about driving at night, for instance, where recent research has helped us understand why some of us, and I'm one of them, struggle driving at night, or when the sun is coming down and when the bright lights are coming into our face. So those things are included in there. So this is it. This is the whole presentation. I hope it's not too long. I haven't checked on time. I think we're good, half an hour, so that is better than expected. I hope I didn't speak too fast. That's one of my weaknesses, and I'm open to any questions.